At the International Snow Science Workshop in 2009 in Davos, Switzerland, Jörg Schweitzer and Cora Shea and I presented the first estimates for avalanche risk for various different levels of avalanche danger. This is a version of that talk. When we have different levels of avalanche danger from a regional forecast center, the question is, how much riskier is it? How much riskier is moderate compared to low? And of particular interest, how much more riskier is it when the avalanche danger is considerable? All right, so I'm going to talk about an event tree as a way of combining different probabilities. And first, we'll look at the probability of triggering. We did not have data for this, so we used an expert survey to get the probability of triggering. Next, we'll find out the probability of death if caught, and that comes from Canadian accident data. And then using the event tree to do some calculations, we'll calculate the risk for various different danger level. And that'll be compared with the risk due to other kinds of recreation. And then finally, I'll make some comments here, try and answer this question, how much riskier is considerable? So here's our event tree. For each regional danger level, it can be either low, moderate, considerable, high, or extreme. And then these branches of the event tree exist for each of these different levels. I've only shown the branches here for considerable. The first branch that comes up is what's the probability of triggering. And we're also interested in the probability of natural avalanches, but that's less than 10%. So we're going to drop that and assume that that leads to zero risk. And for the no triggering here, that obviously leads to no avalanche risk of death. And so we'll drop that. And then this particular, the probability associated with this yes branch here is of particular interest. We did not have data for this, so we used the expert survey. And we had to simplify the question in a couple of important ways. First, we asked them about unskilled route selection. In other words, center punching the start zones as we see here. So the respondents, that is the experts, were asked to consider the many different trigger zones in the forecast area with which they were familiar. And we certainly didn't distinguish between different parts of a particular trigger zone. And we also didn't distinguish, or the questions didn't distinguish, between the different trigger zones within a forecast area. This is all averaged over a forecast area. And unfortunately, the results of this study do not downscale to a particular start zone or a particular feature within a start zone. All right, here are the results of the survey. When the avalanche danger is low, the middle 50% of the estimates from the experts came in between around 1 in 10,000 and 1 in 100,000. That then jumps about by a factor of 10 as we get up here to moderate, and jumps again by a factor a little more than 10 when we jump up here to considerable, and again a factor of 10 to get up here to high or extreme. So we see the odds of skier triggering a potentially fatal avalanche increase by a factor of 10 as we go from low to moderate, from moderate to considerable, and high to extreme. These are a very experienced bunch of experts. They had an average of 26 years of experience. And just a reminder here, we're showing the middle 50% of the data, so 12 of the 23 experts, their estimate here for considerable would have been between 100 and 1 in 100 and 1 in 1,000. One of the things I get out of this thing here is there can be a lot of tracks before we can have triggering, so not to take tracks very seriously, because just because we see some tracks, 2 or 3 people have been down, doesn't mean we could downgrade the avalanche danger from considerable to moderate. Okay, so now we have the odds of triggering a potentially fatal avalanche. Now we want to know the odds of being caught. Jörg Schweitzer knew about a Swiss study in which the odds of being caught, given that you triggered an avalanche, was about 40%, so we used that. All right, so now we have this one here, and we want to look at the probability of being caught. That's from the Swiss data set, and then the probability of being killed, which depends on the destructive size of the avalanche. We have the distribution of sizes from Canadian accident data. Size 1s are not important because they lead to zero risk of death. Size 2 is really quite important because there are a lot of these, and then there are less size 3s. People get caught in less size 3s than they do in size 4s. So we use the Canadian accident data to get the probability of being killed for any specific size of avalanche. And we see that here from the Canadian Avalanche Center. So for a D2 avalanche here, it is around 7%, and this is a log scale over through here. For a size D3 avalanche, or 3 on the destructive scale, it's 43%. If we combine all the different sizes in through here and the frequency of the different sizes of avalanches, and the smaller ones being more common, then we get about 19% for all the different sizes. Well, thinking back to the early 1980s when I was ski cutting in avalanches, size D2s and some larger, on the job and during recreation, and there really weren't that many injuries. 7% seemed way too high for the probability of death. My experience was telling me one thing, the Canadian Avalanche Centre data was telling me something else. As I was scratching my head trying to figure out this puzzle, Cora Shea walked into my office and I asked her. She was very quick to answer. She said, well, maybe the reporting rate for the non-fatal involvements was less than the reporting rate for fatal involvements. So I've asked a bunch of people familiar with reporting in Canada and to estimate the frequency of reporting for non-fatal involvements in Canada. The number 5% keeps coming up again and again. And this is not a formal survey. It's just me asking a bunch of people over a cup of coffee. Right. So here we see the rates for 5% and 10% in through here. If we look at a D2 avalanche here in the blue, it drops off to 0.007, less than 1%, which is much more consistent with my experience and with the estimates coming from people for the reporting rate. Okay? And then it drops off even more to 0.003 if only 5% of the non-fatals are being reported to the Canadian Avalanche Centre. All right, so now we have all the probabilities we need, all the numbers we need to actually calculate the risk of being killed for any of these different danger levels here. But that just gives us a number, and the number doesn't mean much unless we compare it. Now we want to compare the risk with certain established values for other recreation. Here we see kayak in the United Kingdom in the 1950s here at 1 in 20,000 person days per fatality. Here we see rock climbing also from Britain in the 1950s here, 1 in 5,000 person days per fatality. Here's a really interesting and more recent estimate by Werner Munter. And for 1 day of backcountry skiing in Switzerland, when the people are not using all the risk reduction measures that he recommends and the avalanche danger is not low, he comes out to 1 in 5,000. For mountaineering here, and this is a Colorado study from the 1950s, we see about 1 in 1,500 person days per fatality. So if we plot low avalanche danger on here, and the risk increases with the number of trigger zones because our calculations are all for an individual trigger zones in here, it comes out very much squashed next to the axis here and it's quite low. For moderate avalanche danger here, and we get up 10, 15, 20 trigger zones, we start to get up in the level for kayaking here according to the 1950 studies. Okay? And this line appears straight, but it's actually very slightly curved. The increase with the number of trigger zones skied is calculated from an encounter probability. Now, for considerable here, the risk is higher. It goes up by about a factor of 10. So we have a band in through here and a middle value or an expected value. The band corresponds to the variability in the estimates in here. So we're taking the middle 50% of the estimates of triggering odds from the 25th percentile to the 75th percentile. And we're also taking into the range of the probability of death for 5% of non-fatals being reported to 10% of non-fatals being reported. What we see in that if we're talking, say, about 10 trigger zones, then we're in Munter's range for backcountry skiing, which is a nice check on ours, because here we're talking about center punching the start zones when the avalanche danger is considerable. He's talking about not using all risk reduction measures when the avalanche danger is not low, and we're seeing some comparable values there, so there's a good check. And for 10 or so trigger zones per day, we're in the range of rock climbing for a day based on the 1950 United Kingdom study. Okay. If we start to hit up a higher number of trigger zones per day, then these estimates come up closer to that of mountaineering. For high avalanche danger, it jumps up over and through here, and for a fairly small number of trigger zones being center punched per day, we're pretty quickly up in the range of mountaineering, or 1 in 1,500 fatalities per person days of that kind of recreation. So in summary, we made some simplifying assumptions here. One of the big ones is everything applies for center punching the start zone, so this is rather potential risk or maximum risk. We also see that the triggering odds increase by about a factor of 10 as we go from low to moderate, moderate to considerable, considerable to high, or high to extreme. And we had to make some big assumptions to get these first estimates of quantitative risk for any particular level of danger level, and that's worth keeping in mind. Some more results for unskilled route selection here. The potential avalanche risk when we're low and we're center punching start zones is actually less than our estimate for kayaking. If we're skiing about 20 or so trigger zones per day and center punching them when it's moderate, we're actually still in the range for kayaking. And the potential avalanche risk when it's considerable, say very roughly 10 trigger zones per day, we're in the range of Munter's estimates for backcountry skiing or rock climbing and perhaps mountaineering as well. And I want to thank the organizations that support this research. Thank you.